Hello, Team New Horizons family. JuJuan Buford broadcasting Detroit Metro, and definitely excited to be addressing a topic as it relates to a question that I receive frequently from particularly new partners, but quite frankly, even those of us who are more seasoned. And that deals with how to give a good presentation or how to improve your presentation skills. And look, if this is you, right, you're at a point where you have consternation giving the presentation, if you are uncomfortable with public speaking, understand that we all started there, right? It is the number one fear. When you ask most individuals what are they most deathly afraid of, people would rather run through a ball of fire and be burned alive than to speak publicly, right? But understand, once again, we all start there. Like, no one's born out the womb enjoying public speaking, right? It's something that you have to get comfortable with, something you have to get accustomed to, and it comes with practice. You have to do it, right? But I wanted to provide a couple tips that I think will serve you well in terms of giving you an effective presentation as it relates to the Legal Shield B2B value proposition that we have here, right? And one of those tips is to listen to the presentation, right? When I am giving Zoom calls, whether it be in group settings or whether it's one-on-one with a prospect, a potential client, know that one of the things that I'm paying attention to is whether or not you're paying attention, right? Because I know one of the most effective ways to improve at the presentation is to, number one, pay attention to the presentation, take notes on the presentation like you're going to have to give the next one. That is one of the most effective means to improve at it, because when you're taking notes on the presentation, you're paying attention to verbiage, you're paying attention to inflection, you're paying attention to how much time is being spent on one particular topic or one particular subject or one particular aspect of the plan as opposed to another. These are things you want to pay attention to. You want to listen to the stories, the anecdotes, and the metaphors, right, that are being utilized, because it's in the areas between the lines that make the presentation. People often get caught up in what's being said, right, and maybe how floetic or articulate the person is. But at the end of the day, that's not the reason why people have an affirmative response to a presentation. You know, I've heard the axiom said time and time again: facts tell, stories sell. Right? It's the stories, it's the anecdotes, it's the metaphors, it's the way in which we make the membership come alive. It's not what it does per se, it's how it actually helps a person. And the stories help to make it tangible, right? Make it salient, make it applicable to their lives. And so you want to be taking notes when you're listening to a presentation. Take notes, once again, as if you have to give it yourself. To be transparent with you, the other reason why you want to pay attention is because your guests are queuing in on you. They're listening to what the expert or speaker is saying, but they're watching you. And if you're enthusiastic, if you're taking notes, if you're paying attention to the presentation, that's how they know whether or not they're receiving a good presentation. Once again, keep in mind, number one, majority of people have never heard a professional Legal Shield presentation. That's number one. But number two, even fewer number, a very minuscule number, ever heard that we have B2B services for entrepreneurs and companies. Very few people. And they don't know that they should tune in and pay attention to those nuances and those differences between information they may have been exposed to versus what they're receiving during that presentation, unless you're tuned in. It's how you play team. I can tell you 99% of the time, when a person hears a presentation, it makes sense, they say as such, they feel like it's something that will be a viable investment, but they don't make it a buying decision. 99% of the time, I kid you not, it's because the person that was on the line, the other associate, the other business partner, was off doing 2 and 3 other things. Jumped off in the middle of the presentation, take a phone call, or to get up and get a glass of water. Look, don't do it. Focus in, pay attention. So that's one way to get better at the presentation. The other way to get better at the presentation is to listen to a variety of ring earners presentations. You want to copy the right cats, right? You want to copy the cats that just don't sound good and look good and are entertaining and funny. No, you want to copy the cats to get results. Okay, be careful about this, because there are a lot of people who give good presentations that are entertaining, but people don't lean in and make a buying decision after hearing it. So, safe to say you want to listen to ring earners, right? You can go to the shieldnation.com website, and there is a section on that site where you can literally hear, I think, 4 or 5 different ring earners one of the top producers in the entire company, give their presentation. Invaluable, right? Take notes of that presentation if you have to give it yourself. You can go to Prospect by Leadership, right? You can go to that tool, and there are presentations being given by individuals who've created and have phenomenal success stories, right? And more importantly, they've helped other people have success stories because they've duplicated those presentations. So you're going to hear me say this time and time again, right? It's going to be redundant because we know the mother of all learning is spaced repetition, right? Take the notes. Take notes on that presentation as if you have to give it yourself, right? That's one of the most effective ways to get better and to improve your presentation skills. You have the corporate Super Saturdays. You have a convention coming up, right? Where once again, you're going to have the creme de la creme. Those individuals who have effectively not only built their own franchises, but have turned around and helped others build theirs. And you want to take notes, particularly on the stories, the anecdotes, the metaphors, the way in which they make the information come alive and make it applicable and salient once again to the individuals who are listening. Once again, people don't acquire our service. They don't end up buying into our value proposition because of what we do. They do it because of how they believe it can help them, right? You can go features, benefits all day long, but people can't see how it's palpable to their lives and how they can apply what it is we're sharing with them to get immediate results. You're not going to get buy-in. And so you want to pay attention to those things. The other thing, at the end of the day, you just got to do it. You just have to do it, okay? Academic knowledge is great. Taking notes are great. Hearing it repeatedly over and over again, that spaced repetition is fantastic. But at some point in time, you have to be willing to actually give the presentation yourself. You got to be willing to stand in front of the room or stand in front of a Zoom and give it. And look, let me give you a little bit of perspective, right, to help you with this. Understand that 90% of the time, probably more than that, the person that's hearing the presentation from you is hearing that presentation for the first time. In other words, they don't know whether or not your presentation sucks, okay? They don't know whether or not you forgot to dot an I or cross a T. They don't know, right? So the only way they know whether or not you're giving a good or bad presentation is from the cues they receive from you, right? You're twiddling your pen or your thumbs. Your eye gaze isn't focused on them. You have your hands on your face, right? People don't trust people who put their hands on their face and they're giving presentations. They don't, right? You're not smiling. You seem pressed or you seem tense. People pay attention to our nonverbal cues above and beyond what we're sharing with them verbally, right? They pay attention to the confidence or the swagger, right? Our command of the content. In other words, as long as you're comfortable, as long as you're speaking from your personal experience, right? And you're just simply sharing your experience, your thoughts, and why it makes sense to you, and you're doing so in a confident manner, they only know to tune into that, right? And I just want you to grasp that. And over the course of time, it's just like anything else. It's just like riding a bike. It's just like learning to swim for the first time. It's just like learning how to climb a tree or learning how to cut an apple. I mean, these are all learned behaviors, right? None of us come out of the room understanding how to peel an apple. None of us come out of the room running, a mile underneath 6 minutes. It's all practice. It's learned behavior. Public speaking and giving presentations work in the exact same way. The more you do it, the better you'll get, right? And it's kind of plan, do, review, or it's execute, review, plan, and do, right? So go out there and give the presentation, record your presentations, seek feedback from those individuals who are more seasoned and have perfected it, right? Who do a better job of communicating the value prop. Go back into the field, do it again. The only difference between myself or anyone else in the organization is that I've heard the presentation a million times. So now I can give it in my sleep, right? That's the only difference. I remember approximately 13 years ago, well, I've been public speaking for 20 years, but let's say about 13 years ago, I actually had to learn this specific presentation. And I remember I was nervous. I knew that my mentor at the time was not going to be available to share the information on my behalf of a client. And he had given me a phone call the day before to tell me as such. But we had a presentation that day. And I sat in front of him as he shared the information with one of my clients. And he didn't realize it, but I took notes almost verbatim. It was chicken scratching in a notepad. As soon as the appointment ended, I shook his hand, thanked him, thanked the client, And I immediately remember sitting in my vehicle for about 30 to 40 minutes, and I literally did that presentation repeatedly, over and over again. I probably practiced that presentation about 6 or 7 times, just looking at my chicken scratch, right? What I can remember from certain cues that I took and certain verbiage and diction that he utilized, I took it down verbatim. Now, I didn't know, or I didn't find out till after the fact that he had actually fibbed to me. So I took notes in that presentation. I did a private conference call because we weren't doing Zooms back then, right? So we're utilizing free conference call. I had a prospective client on the conference call, and I gave the presentation, literally from my legal pad. Verbatim. My mentor was actually on the private conference call. I didn't know it. And once the call ended, when the other party hung up from the call, he hurried up and chirped in and said, "That was a great presentation." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, you told me you couldn't make the point." He says, "Man, I just had to test you. I had to see whether or not you had the tenacity to follow through anyway." And he starts chuckling because he said, "You know what? That presentation was almost verbatim, word for word, the presentation I gave yesterday." I said, "Yeah." I didn't want to mess it up, right? I didn't want to say something out of turn. I didn't want to provide misinformation. I didn't want to, quite frankly, make an ass of myself, to be transparent with you. And that's when I kind of picked up these cues and these notes, and it's something I've done time and time again. Every time I hear a presentation given from someone who I know in particular has more experience, is more effective than me, I take notes verbatim. You'll see me doing it from time to time. Even when a newer associate is giving a presentation or speaking, I'll take notes on it, because sometimes a newer eye sees the value proposition in a different way that can be beneficial to other people who may not be able to identify with me or don't have the same life experience, right? So these are just some quick tips if you want to improve your public speaking skills. These are some quick tips if you want to improve your presentation skills. As always, I celebrate success in advance. Goodbye for now. Okay, is this going to cooperate? It's not going to cooperate.